I want to first say that I have done my best to encapsulate a lot of this data, but it is not always the easiest for me to simplify something that is highly complex. One needs to be able to draw correlations in their mind. Otherwise, the weight of the words I feel that I may say may not be understood as they should be, as well as due to a lot of varying ideas and facets that all relate to one another. Don't believe anything I say. Do the research. Yet, paradoxically, I made the statement the other day at the last meeting on Monday, which was, dare to take heed and consider someone who is given the time, and let that be the spark that ignites you on your way to research to become aware of what's been hidden from so many. So, the government. Let's break that word down. Government, what's your ment? That's your mentality. Reality is based on a matter of perception, and if you can influence perception, you can control a lot of things. It's important to know that the law is hidden in 4 languages: French, Latin, Spanish, and legalese, which is English within English. Whenever you're in a court of law and they're speaking English, but it's a different kind where you don't exactly know where it's from, that's done intentionally to keep you in the dark and in this system of control, continuing perpetually in motion. Let us make the distinction between ignorance and nescience. Ignorance refers to refusing or ignoring, it's in the word, to pay attention or to disregard something. Nescience means being unaware or unable to learn about a body of knowledge, either because it's not pre-existing in a book or another media, or because we lack an ability to comprehend and become aware of that knowledge. It all starts when you're born. Allegorically, when a ship comes into the canal, it's called birthing, with an E instead of an I. We also come out of a canal as we are in our birth. Ships are called female names, and they deliver products. Women produce products: labor, delivery room, birth, ship. A ship pulls into the dock, and what's waiting for us as we come out? A doctor. A ship needs a certificate of manifest. Well, our birth certificate is a certificate that we have manifested into this realm. No one asks for a birth certificate, but it makes you a citizen. Citizenship was created with the abolition of the slave trade, and it was so that slaves could be given the same rights as the free people, but without the same power. Etymology is the scientific study of the origin and evolution of a word's semantic meaning across time, including the morphemes and the phonemes. The law of the sea enters here with all of this. We use nautical terms every day. How do we move around? With currency. Wait a minute. Current, sea, like currents at sea. When you sell your home, you put it up for sale. Sale. Berth is meaning a space where a vehicle can be parked, docked for loading or unloading. When a product leaves a warehouse, it gets shipped. Why use the word ship when being transported by air or car? When you connect a device, you connect the device to a USB port. A porthole on a ship is used as openings on a vessel. When you make something ship-shape, you make it clean. The word captain comes from the word capital, which is money or water, and now we're back to currency. Another connection, jury rig is a nautical term meaning something assembled in a makeshift manner, offering nothing more than a temporary solution. From that, ironically, we've gotten the term jury rigging, which describes attempts to place certain people as jurors in a court proceeding to ensure a particular decision. The aforementioned have been some examples of maritime etymological connections, and believe me, we will see many more. Legal is not lawful, and admiralty, which is the law of the ocean, which, interestingly enough, banking law resides, derives its authority from common law, which comes from our Creator. Some more interesting connections are, after a signature is acquired from the parents, a pair who rents, a person is created under a corporation under maritime law, and they represent a ship vessel, essentially. It's not disclosed that when you sign a birth certificate, you register your offspring onto the modern-day surreptitious slave system, taking advantage of everyone's seti trust. When you sign the birth certificate, the offspring is registered as a ward to the state, which in part is what allows CPS to remove offspring from their parents. Black's Law Dictionary tells us that the definition of a person is a corporate fiction. The only person known is a corporation. Human, and I'll get to this word later, is also interesting as it appears nowhere in the Bible. But if you look it up in certain versions of Black's Law, it says sea monster. So if you go there, it says one that cannot own or inherit property. All governments have human resource departments. All corporations have human resource departments. Getting married also inserts you and grants CPS its authority, as it is a fraud and patented by the United States Patent and Trademark Office. Though I wish I had that board. I would have given an example, but I should have brought mine. But the United States Patent and Trademark has patented marriage. You can look that up. It's a triangle, if you can imagine it. The state is at the top. The bottom line on the triangle is dotted, and that's where they put God. And then the wife is on the right side, the husband is on the left. The husband gets joined to the state, the wife gets enjoined, after joined, and God is on the dotted line because any architect will tell you that that is a beam that bears no weight. So that's what our government thinks of the Creator. So this is also the actual thing. Those who apply for and marry pursuant to a marriage license have added a third party to their marriage contract. The third party is the master, by and through his agent, the corporate state. The marriage license gives the state the legal right to decide the fate of the husband, wife, and the possessions that they procure during their marriage. Should the marriage fail, their divorce must now be decided by and through the state corporate court, by a corporate judge, and the judge's first and foremost concern is in the interest of the state. The interest of the bride and groom is now secondary, and that was settled by Van Kosten versus Van Kosten, 154 NE 146. To quote the judge, quote, "The ultimate ownership of all property is the state. An individual so-called ownership is only by virtue of the government." End quote. What a chilling and eye-opening quote that is. Sidestepping slightly to hammer in a point that a great wool has been held over our eyes, an article in the USA, therepublic.com said that when you enter a courtroom displaying a yellow or gold French flag, you have just entered a foreign country, and you better have your passport with you because you may not be coming back to the land of the free for a long time. The judge or magistrate sitting under a gold or yellow French flag becomes the captain or master of that ship or enclave and has absolute power to make the rules as he or she goes. The gold or yellow French flag is your warning that you're leaving your constitutionally secured rights on the floor outside the door of that courtroom. It is important to note that the Constitution of the USA was formed in 1776 and is different than the United States Constitution, which was in 1871. The United States Incorporated is a corporation formed in Delaware in 1871, which is nothing more than a privately owned company. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17 of the Federal Constitution says that the United States Incorporated is a 10-square-mile area known as Washington, D.C., which is a foreign corporation, as is the Royal Castle in the United Kingdom and the Vatican. There's the connections, which all, last time I checked, all have monuments which represent a phallus in defiance to the Creator. What this means is that the United States Corporation only has authority over the District of Columbia, which is a different sovereign jurisdiction entirely. It also means that the trinity of slavery is the City of London, which wants a one-world universal law, the Vatican, which wants a one-world religion, religion, and our Federal Reserve wants one-world finance. Each of these takes care of our Setikevi Trust, which is our trade name corporation, our straw man, and our bond trust. Your straw man is your name in all capitals, like on your license, or anytime you get a bill, like stuff like that. The weight, through his potential faults, of Jefferson's words still hit me, however. Quote, "The germ of destruction by our nation is in the hand of the judiciary, an irresponsible body, working like gravity by day and by night, gaining a little today and a little tomorrow, and advancing its noiseless step like a thief over the field of jurisdiction, until all shall render powerless the checks of one branch over the other, and will become as venal and oppressive as the government from which we separated." He also said, "If people let the government decide what foods they eat and what medicines they take, their bodies will soon be in as sorry a state as are the souls who live under tyranny." We are looked at as stock or cattle, hence why we have yards for ourselves, to enjoy ourselves in. Comes from the word stockyard, meaning transient cattle, sheep, swine, or horses being temporarily kept for slaughter, market, or shipping. All citizens are governed under corporate law. All corporations must have a president, vice president, secretary, and treasury, similar to governmentalities, okay? A citizen is an employee of the United States Incorporated. Your name in all caps is dictated by the United States Printing Styles Manual that refer to corporations. It is a legal fiction, not an actual flesh and blood man or woman as we are here in this room. Police, judges, magistrates, lawyers, all speak this language legalese to get unwitting people to knowingly give consent from a myriad of different word traps. A Black's Law Dictionary is most helpful to aid in discerning the reality of legalese. If you can get your hands on a 4th edition, 1951 to 1968, count yourself lucky, as after that, lawyers and barristers started to redact terms from the book that they deemed problematic for the people to know. One can also, however, look up a PDF copy, but me personally, I am old school and enjoy the physicality of holding and flipping through old books of antiquity, so I'm currently on the hunt myself to add it to my collection. For example, let's use some examples. When a public servant asks you if you understand, most say yes without a thought. Let's clarify in a conversation to you and I right now, do you comprehend the words I just conveyed to you means, do you understand? To a police officer or in a court of law, however, it has a different meaning, which is, do you agree to stand under me and give me authority and jurisdiction over you? If you answer yes, you can see why 98% of people lose in court. When you say yes, you end up creating a verbal contract with them. When you register something with the government, they assume it belongs to them. When you get a bill, it's sent to you but belongs to your strawman. That's why bills, fines, summons start with Mr., Ms., sometimes Mrs. Sometimes your surname will be in capitals, just like on a gravestone, because your name in all caps is considered dead, lost at sea, before you could comprehend or even consent to it, as it is just a piece of paper. When you go to court, you represent your strawman, assuming that you understand. So you, the inalienable being, take on the costs or fees and fines that are associated for the strawman. The flesh and blood human you doesn't need to pay them, but because you've entered into a verbal contract and or you're making a contract by appearing as your strawman, just like the government has trained you to do, you take it. Think of an addict. Normally, we give them a 12-step program. So I ask you to critically think. What do you think grades 1 through 12 were? They have conditioned us since kindergarten by an education system that was Rockefeller instituted at most, if not all levels, to inundate the teachings with their history and rhetoric, never mind what the truth is or was. Another word from their training that got me was human. Hue-man. Hue meaning color. So the color, the shade of man. Race, color, is currently and has been used historically as a toolkit for division. The idea of color is kind of erroneous if we really think about it. Black, brown, white, it shouldn't matter, as we are all brother and sister, and we are all colored people by definition. Aren't white people actually shades of pink, olive, and beige? Labels divide people, and I think it's time that we reject division. Let's start seeing through the divisive, inflammatory, insightful, hate-filled media in all its forms, in all its rhetorics that is bombarding most people every day. Back to the trust. If you were born between 1933 and 1975, you were bonded for $630,000 and you were insured for $1 million. If you were born after 1975, you were bonded for $1 million and insured for $2 million. Setikevi trust, which means the term of life or years, is an individual trust underneath the umbrella of the Public Charitable Trust. So the Public Charitable Trust Act of 1882 created the Public Charitable Trust. The Setikevi Trust Act of 1666, can't make that one up, made each individual trust that we each all have through our birth registration. The tentacles go all the way back to 1302 with Pope Boniface VII. I found that one interesting. He had a lot of ties to the Knights Templar. I also found him accepting $11 million also interesting. I mean, it's all interesting. Under Setikevi Trust, we are considered dead, lost at sea, as I had mentioned earlier. On the birth certificate, there is a bank name, and on it is bond paper. There is a QSIP LEI number that is associated with your Social Security number. A QSIP number is an investment control number that is regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. So after 1975, you were bonded for $1 million. So that means that the bank went to the International Monetary Fund on behalf of the public on our QSIP numbers, borrowed from the IMF $1 million in ones all the way up to hundreds, and then they throw that back out to the general public. They distribute the money to the banks for every person that is born. On the credit side, $1 million worth of U.S. Treasury bonds are issued and they are sold. They are hypothecated, they are bundled, and they are sold on the stock exchange. You can look this up at fidelity.com or dtcc.com as just some examples. Go to search QSIP/LEI, type in your Social Security number with the hyphens, and buckle up. You will see yourself being traded all over the world, and I speak from personal experience as I have looked myself up, my father, my woman, my 5-year-old brother, my sister, etc. We all have more than one QSIP number. As we increase in value, more assets, we join the military or get a college degree, etc., we gain more and more QSIP numbers. You are the credit, and are making us believe that we are the debtors. They keep track of everything in regards to you over your lifetime. Medical bills, food, tax returns, credit cards, bank statements, all tied to the International Monetary Fund and the Federal Reserve, which isn't even federal at all. It's just another example of selective disclosure and euphemisms meant to mask and obfuscate the truth. Bean counters, called the Department of Fiscal Services, just keep track of everything in everyone's life. All of this adds up on the debit side of your Setikevi trust, and it keeps growing and growing throughout your life on the investment side of the IMF. At some point, we die, and it goes through a probate. They'll then take, for example, let's say lifetime earnings were about 10 million. They'll subtract 10 million out of the investment, and they'll pay all this, and the debit side becomes a zero balance. And they even pay back the initial loan to the International Monetary Fund, plus interest. By the way, that's a loan to a foreign entity. Now, let's say the credit side, after you die, has $90 million still left in it. What happens? The Setikevi trust lives on in perpetuity forever. Everyone who has ever died since 1933 is currently funding the government, which makes sense considering we've been a corporation roughly, or a long time before then, pledging the people as collateral for debt. This also gets me thinking of like where you hear stories of dead people voting, or all these other things of how these numbers don't match up. Well, start put two and two together. The money gets reinvested, but the balance, the debt must stay the same forever. But if it keeps earning, they will just sweep it off the top. And if they'll sweep it off the top, and it funds the government, and it's called off-book funds. In the States, it is known as GSA. In the federal government, it's CQV. Just want to make the point of why don't you think they care in general anytime that they misuse our money? Worse yet, it's under false guises and masked under euphemisms and selective disclosure. That's why the IRS not too long ago lost roughly $3.6 billion of our money in a supposed accounting error. To touch here on how we got here in part, John D. Rockefeller created the General Education Board in 1903 and is quoted as saying, "I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers." They put in $127 million in 1903 to inundate this country with their teachings. 12-step program, remember? They took control over everything that you think, learn, and know. Everything comes from them and the people in corporations and in all positions, from healthcare to politics to media to science. From that, we have now reached the point where we are at in society, and it's best explained by these three methods of control that are currently running amok right now. Number one, neuro-linguistic programming, which is the use of certain words to program the neurons specifically in the subconscious to affect the way in which one perceives reality. Number two, all of that to achieve critical factor bypass, which is when you saturate everything in media, banking, schools, sports, etc., with specific messages and have it repeated over and over and over again. The subconscious mind, due to seeing it everywhere, assumes that it must be true. Your critical thinking is bypassed as a result, hence the term. Number three, all of this leading to mass formation psychosis or hypnosis. 1 to 5% is needed to stand and resist this in order to change the tide. And amazingly, I would bring in the comparison for the revolution that resisted at 3%. To understand and, more importantly, overstand this, we must reflect on it being used in Nazi Germany, during Mao in China, during the Bolshevik Revolution in the USSR. It is a psychological operation, and this can be traced to Operation Mockingbird by the CIA, which has multiple intelligence agencies infiltrating media organizations and organizations to push narratives and propaganda so that we can go to war and ultimately takes money from the public and puts it into private hands. All of this to say, let's be mindful and aware so that we can use tact and resist civilly and righteously. I want to bring some quotes that have meaning to me in this regard. As I continue to speak, you may not know him, but I like some hip hop, and he is a very vernacular hip hopper. His name is KRS. It stands for Knowledge Reigns Supreme. And he said, "When a real being speaks, all nature in the universe responds," end quote, which I am hoping that some of you here are. Also hoping that igniting a fire within you as it is within me. And another quote, the words of Malcolm X, quote, "Nobody can give you freedom. Nobody can give you the equality or justice or anything. If you're a man, you take it," end quote. Coming back to where we are at currently, the Constitution says that you cannot convert a right into a privilege and charge a license or a fee for it, or it's null and void like it never existed. However, they have insidiously and surreptitiously converted our right to travel and made it into driving. They have made it a commercial federal jurisdiction, and they've convinced most to sign the license contracts saying that they'll agree to follow all of the internal bylaws and commercial terms. It's not actually true. Judges also get paid for every single ticket that comes across their desk, no matter the outcome. The clerk will file an SF-24, SF-25, or SF-25A. These are bonds. Bonds create securities. The bonds go into the Judiciary Retirement Fund, and the judge gets a cut of every single ticket. The system is designed to enslave the judges for the ones that are greedy and the ones that feel guilty and use us, we the people. It's against all of us. Anything to do with traffic that has no victim is null and void and repugnant to the Constitution, and that's a fact. However, this truth is lost on the majority of society, to the detriment of most. No corpus delicti, no crime. They take our own money, and then they pay the cops, two of which are Freemasonic affiliated, which then pay the judges to shut their mouth and keep this system based on taking advantage of everyone in perpetual motion while they distract us with nonsense and divisive content on the basis of religion, color, culture, politics that they peddle from the media organizations that they also own. The game must stop because of this noise. It's distracting us from real important things going on. Sexual trafficking, organ harvesting, divide of the nuclear family, and policies that negatively affect us all, as just some examples. If you ever look around at the roughly 800,000 missing kids annually per year, for instance, in the US, one needs to ask themselves, how does an infant run away? How does that happen? It's obvious that there is something nefarious going on when Child Protective Services, I laugh at the name now, loses roughly 2,200 young ones a day on average. I don't care what comes my way. I don't care who mocks me. I don't care what anyone who thinks they're capable of slandering me says. I humbly aim to speak for the truth with reason and amelioration, that's the pursuit of something better, and at the forefront of my pursuit, to hopefully the benefit of us all. But it takes all of us. We are our fiduciaries. We the people. Nosotros los propias personas. We must ask ourselves how billions of dollars go into this system to fund public servants, to go after the people, to take money from the people, to fund judges' retirement, all the while all these things are going on as just scratching the iceberg. This system is clearly weaponized against us, and it takes you, it takes me, it takes all to rise to the occasion. Columbus, through all of his genocidal Jesuit-based missions, had said one thing that I have enjoyed. Los indios fueran una gente en Dios. The Indians were a people of God, in God. in God, in Dios, in the end. We must think of our ancestors and what each of our relatives has gone through for each of us to be here in this very moment right now. Our past, whether we had a part of it or not, his past is riddled with stealing land, culture, over 500 of which have been destroyed, killing millions, and then sticking the remaining on the worst land. And as a special bonus, we generally name them after ourselves. Grammar, back to etymology, comes from grimoire, which is a book of black magic spells. Words come from the Word Sisters, who were witches. Spelling is spell casting, which I hope previous examples have demonstrated. Cursive is another one. Cursive. We awake each morning to work during the weekdays. We need to start translating so we can become aware of the trances of what words etymologically mean, so as to uncover their hidden meanings more effectively. Awake is a funeral party for the dead. So why are we happy to awake? Mourning is a state of loss for a loved one. You'd have to be in a weekdays to earn a living, since urns are for the ashes of the dead. Job itself is a Hebrew word for persecuted. I tie that to Job. Job was persecuted. And in Black's law, it's defined as public business for private dishonest gain. Nice meaning for job. At the end, we get the weak end of the deal. Most of us say hello to each other without thinking that backwards it says, oh hell. Hated is death. I give examples because I believe language has been so hidden intentionally so as to keep most people in a state of unawareness, never scrutinizing anything. If you control language, you control thought. Control thought, you control action. Control action, you control the world, says Peter Kreeft. A culture's theology has a great deal to do with the word's etymology and how it evolves over time to combine incompatible meanings that may undermine the original thoughts it was meant to define. We think in our languages, and fascinatingly, thoughts vibrate at a certain frequency within our head. Similarly, our words are electromagnetic vibrations whose fine alphabetic tinnitabulations can take on the tint of our true expectations, which they then imprint on our metal of mind, causing sounds to adhere when they are of the same kind. You know I like some rhyme. All governments sorry, I'm reading a little bit. When we look at the word employ, that's two words, employ. Em means for, and ploy is deceit. So employ means for deceit. The word has power, as the Bible tells us. Born comes from the word barren, which means unfruitful, bleak, and lifeless. Parents means a pair who rents. Our government and courts, as we can look around, certainly don't treat a parent's right to control and direct the upbringing of their offspring as a fundamental liberty, certainly not now. Indoctrination from school starts the process. 12-step program. Childhood, looking at the word hood, means to cloak and hide. Children, which is why I don't like using the word, is a combination of two words, chill, meaning cold, and dren, meaning a strong and healthy individual. So children are strong individuals who must be chilled and made cold. Ballantyne's Law Dictionary, 1948, also resolidifies the human being a monster, by defining monster as a human being by birth, but in some part resembling a lower animal. In Oxford's English Dictionary in 1901, it says human is defined as belonging or relative to man as distinguished from God or superhuman beings. So these are saying that we're monsters and have no divine qualities? I don't think so. Continuing to pick apart, live is evil backwards. Lived is devil. So we're born as monsters who are bleak and lifeless to a pair who rents us out to a government of our mental and other corporations that indoctrinate us. Our childhood is spent under a cloak so that our divinity will be hidden from us and or we're evil when we live. Words in Greek mythology were made by witches called the Word Sisters, spelled with a Y, W-Y-R-D. Rite, R-I-T-E, and rite, W-R-I-T-E, are pronounced the same, but a rite is a ceremony or ritual. Books have chapters. A chapter is usually a reference to a secret society. To page someone is to summon them as in the pages of a book. Alcohol comes from the Arabic word al-kul, which is a body-eating spirit. Maybe that's why it's called spirits. It's also the source of the word ghoul. When you drink booze, etymologically, it's pronounced the same way as when a spirit boos or scares someone. Planet is simply a plan to trap everyone under the net of lies. History is his story. Diploma, coming from the word diplume, which means to strip or deprive of one's honor or feathers. A degree is a line bent to angle. Our degree, having one, means that we have been bent to see their angle. Education destroys knowledge, public. Education is training. True knowledge is seldom ever taught, but rather sought. We are currently under the Uniform Commercial Code. As the United States is currently a bankrupt corporation, the court is set up to even be representative of a religious gathering. Courts use Latin. Sorcerers also use Latin. Judges wear long black robes. Satanic masses have long black robes. It's also representative of the Saturnalia cult. Judges summon you. Necromancers summon. Demons are summoned. Writs are various orders of procedure in court, and is also where we get the word writing from. The bar, which stands for the British Accredited Registry, association is associated with reaping. The trust in a trial has three parts. The person that gets taken into court is the beneficiary. Your birth certificate is a title of a trust. The judge will ask for your name. If you give them your name, the one on your birth certificate, then you're allowing the judge or administrator and prosecutor to swap roles with you as the beneficiary. Pro se means to walk in, or pro se means to walk in. Prosecutor means one skin. So prosecutor means to walk in one skin, a skinwalker, an identity thief. The clerk is representative of a cleric. The clerk is the trustee. The prosecutor is the executor, and the prosecutor has the liability. They create the summons to the hearing. But once you admit or understand to being the beneficiary to the trust, then the executor becomes the beneficiary, and you become the executor, and you execute your own sentence if you don't identify with the trust. Then the executor has to pay as they have brought the proceeding to claim. Don't turn yourself into the trustee of your own trust, which makes no sense. Don't state your name directly. Your all caps legal name. You are the appointed trust. You need to remind them. Aren't you the appointed trustee or clerk for this case? Are you not? Going into this, it's so deep. We can talk questions, but I'm just trying to get down. But we can, if anybody has any questions after, all this, I'm willing to answer and go into it. Arming yourself with knowledge is the solution. Drawing close to the Creator and asking for guidance and rebuking what is bad while also being shrewd through discernment and discipline is the way amidst these defunct and upside down times. We need to become neighbors again, becoming self-sufficient again, sitting around and actually listening to grandma and the wisdom of our elders. Every time an elder dies, a library of knowledge burns to the ground. Being cognizant of this is important. Having plans in things, having plans in case things get bad, with people you trust, knowing where to go, what to do, etc. These are all paramount. Standing against these tyrannical distortions and systems of slavery. I hope we can chuckle at the fact that it's quite a task to attempt to draw and relate so many fields of study, including but not limited to archaeology, geography, area studies, anthropology, cultural, biology, psychology, the law, economics, homeopathic care, physics, chemistry, earth sciences, logic, statistics, system science, and having a love and a passion and varying degrees of understanding within all of these, and many more, because for some reason, I enjoy it all. I can't get enough. And doing this is what makes me feel good in part, so that I can give the gems that I discover, the pearls that he was talking about, to you all. One of the last things I'll leave you with to simmer on and ponder a question I had after my research of various fields that eventually turned into an inference, which was then cemented and proven to me upon further examination, and that is the truth about matter. All matter originates by virtue of a force which brings the particle of an atom to vibration and holds this miniature solar system of the atom together. We're made of trillions, by the way. We must assume that behind this force is the existence of an intelligent mind. This mind is the matrix of all matter. The solidity of this world seems totally indisputable as a fixed thing that you can see and touch. Our bodies seem reassuringly solid, don't they? Beginning with Einstein, modern physics has assured us that in all actuality, the solidity of our bodies is a mirage. All physical matter, everything that we have around us, is actually the result of a frequency. And what this means is that if you amplify the frequency to anything, you can change the structure of the matter. What we call matter is energy, whose vibration has been so lowered so as to be perceptible by the senses. There is no matter. That's Einstein himself. Cymatics will show you the visual effect of sound vibration onto matter and shows beautifully the vibrations and frequencies as they create the most geometrically perfect patterns. Personally, I call this the signature of our Creator. I find it hard to look at that. If you ever get around to it and you look at that stuff, how can one deny that's just by chance? There's just no way. There's a CIA document that was approved for release on September 10th of 2003. I'm not going to read the whole number, but I can give this to anyone if they're curious. Department of Army, U.S. Army Intelligence and Security Command from Fort Meade, and it was on the analysis and assessment of our brains, and it's just very enlightening to anyone that wants to read that. Here are some quotes and some scriptures that I wanted to support this with. Knowledge is power. We often hear that, but we don't hear the remainder of that. Knowledge is power. Information is liberating. Education is the premise of progress in every society, in every family. That's by Kofi Annan. In the Gospel of Thomas, Jesus said, know what is in front of your face, and what is hidden from you will be disclosed to you. For there is nothing hidden that will not be revealed. And further in the Gospel of Thomas, Yeshua also said that the Pharisees and the scholars have taken the keys of knowledge and have hidden them. They haven't entered themselves, nor have they allowed those who want to enter to do so. 2 Corinthians 4:4, in whose case the God of this age has blinded the minds of the unbelievers, so that they may not see the light of the gospel of the glory of Yeshua, who is in the image of the Creator, Yahuwah. Philippians 2:4, as you look out not only for your own interests, but also for the interests of others. Proverbs 22:7, the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender. 1 John 3:17, but if anyone has the world's good and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against them, how does Yahuwah's love abide in him? Luke 16:14-15. The Pharisees who loved money heard all of this and were sneering at Yeshua. He said to them, you are the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of others, but Yahuwah knows your hearts. What people value is detestable in Yahuwah's sight. Ephesians 5:11, coincidence, this is not a scripture, but a point. Coincidence is also a funny one because I hear that a lot. Oh, it's just a coincidence, just a coincidence. It's a word that labels and dismisses as insignificant, but what it's actually saying is a coincidence. And these are the three definitions of it: to occupy the same relative position or the same area in space, to happen at the same time or during the same period, to correspond exactly, to be identical. There are so many things to think about with all of these connections of words to better enter and overstand our reality and existence. Noble is self-defining. No bull. Someone with integrity. We need to retune, think about, and upgrade our language. Intelligent should be intelligental, because how is a brain smart without a heart? And, I'm being bare here. I could personally, benefit from that more. So I'm going to try to apply that myself. Thucydides, who was a Greek general and historian, who wrote about the war with Sparta and Athens, said, "The greatest horror was the corruption of the language." Confucius said, if given charge of a country, he would correct the language. Some more points that SCOTUS has said, some things to think about. No state shall convert a liberty into a license and charge a fee, therefore, Murdoch versus Pennsylvania. If a state converts a right into a privilege, the citizen can ignore the license and fee and challenge it with impunity. Impunity means you can't lose. You can beat 40 scholars with one fact, but you can't beat one idiot with 40 facts. That was Rumi. When you call yourself an Indian or a Muslim or a Christian or a European or anything else, it has the potential to be violent. Do you see why? Because you are separating yourself from the rest of mankind. When you separate yourself by belief, by nationality, by tradition, it breeds violence. So a man who is seeking to understand violence does not belong in any country, to any religion, to any political party or partial system. And he is concerned with the total understanding of mankind. And that was Jiddu Krishnamurti. The trouble with the world is not that people know too little. It is that they know so many things that just aren't so. That was Mark Twain. There is simply no polite way to tell people that they've dedicated their lives to an illusion. Daniel Dennett. Obvious and oblivious is only separated by lie, L-I, not L-I-E, but lie is still the same, morphemic sound. Clues, hidden, if only we would notice. Magistra discipulam docet, discipula magistram docet. The teacher teaches the student teaches the teacher. Words are swords, just rearranged, and only real eyes will realize real lies. I have two last things and then I am done. I will read, this is an important thing, kind of talks about what I've been talking about. We have been badly scammed by someone or something, principalities. We are told that such a culture and such nations, which sound nice and are described in wonderfully illustrated storybooks, that we know is history or his story. I think we have reached the point where most of it can go in the trash, because we can see that not so long ago, the world functioned as one nation. A lot of false propaganda about our past is useless if our eyes and heart, and I would dare say our hearts feel something else. Every country has the same buildings, the same shapes, decorative elements. It can be about the pyramids, post offices, railway stations, triumphal arches, sphinxes, obelisks, or state buildings. The same materials, similar shapes, but often even the smallest details match down to the mathematical. They can be found all over South America, Europe, Japan, Australia, and Antarctica they don't want you to know about. So we are told that when there were no telephones, electricity, flights, or a serious power tool anywhere, everyone built in the same way all over the world, moreover, in such a way that to this day it's almost impossible to build these structures or works of art in that quality. Of course, they tried to make the majority of these buildings disappear with the events known as world wars. By the way, the secret societies have funded every single war since the French Revolution. Knights Templar, Illuminati, all these are just the same, just different names. Of course, they tried to make the majority of these buildings disappear with the events known as world wars and civil wars, as well as confiscations, nationalizations, and forced relocations to big cities. But keen researchers found and have begun to summarize these traces. It would be time to understand and find out what our real past really is and how we got involved in this maximally exploited situation, where most everyone is deceived and misled in every way. One of the big real points that is tangible and visible to everyone are the buildings, which for some reason have been left to us, because books, photos, and video materials that come from the time before 1953 are almost all retouched or visibly manipulated. I watched a 2.5-hour documentary on how they've had Photoshop for at least 230 years. Mind-blowing when you consider the ramifications. Even the common language is something, and this is not me, this is just someone else's words, but they just they resonated with me. But even the common language is something that he can't understand. How could it be messed up in less than 200 years? However, I am almost certain that there is a reasonable explanation for this as well. Maybe this Babel story is somehow true, and it was not at all as ancient as they say, together with the flood, which is an example of the buildings under mud all over the world. Maybe there was an event recently that changed the whole world. Maybe that's when the parasites ruling the current world came into the leadership positions. Maybe the languages were deliberately changed to incite us people who are all soulmates to each other. One question raises another, but perhaps the basis of everything is to understand that in reality, who are we, where do we come from, and where are we going? And that we should think and contemplate about these things. And I'm closing out with this. I wrote this poem I wanted to close out with. Hopefully the words hit you. For my brothers, my sisters, for the mothers, the misters, the messages I try to convey within sentences for emphasis I analyze away, to try to bring us closer to each other, for exposure of posers and hidden truths, trying to bring many closure that's written within roots. That's a reference to DNA. Codes existing all around us, roads insisting, calling, surround us. Shrewd perspective, elegant, triumphantly blunt, intelligent embellishment. It's all in our mental. Abundantly stun on impediments. That's a fundamental. Esoteric meanings inspire feelings, gives precedence. Too many have become disconnected. They forgot about the prescience of our almighty creator. We are living lessons, a testa and a mint. We are greater, no traitors, patient like a waiter. Seeking to end up in favor, walk straighter, my trainer, the creator. Ask questions, because it threatens these gremlins in our political sections. Forget about the propaganda they be perpetuating. Take it from me, my brothers and sisters, it ain't worth waiting. Reading the writing on the walls, yo quiere decir a usted que yo soy tu hermano. I want to tell you that I'm your brother. Think about what I say, it takes a mind to meander. Majority are auto-zoned. But the most important part, amo con toda su corazón. Love with all your heart. May we all be blessed as he is in the midst of us. Amen.
Amen.